How the hell did I create a one paragraph daily email that 35,000 people read? And what am I doing right now to grow it? But most importantly, how can you use email to grow your business? You're about to find out. Welcome to the I Want to Know podcast. My guest today is Emily Ryan, and I'm about to answer those questions for her. Emily's a top MailChimp expert. She's listed on page 1 of the MailChimp experts directory and is obsessed with helping brands grow via email marketing. In the last 9 years, she's worked on a wide range of emails, from Columbia University to sparkling ice to your mom and pop hardware store. Her work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Inc. magazine, and entrepreneur.com, as well as on the MailChimp blog. You can find her on Instagram stories daily at Emily Ryan Likes, and subscribe to her popular email, 9 Things Sunday, which is a link roundup of fun from around the internet. She's also a mom of 3 crazy kids, and we have gone back and forth oftentimes on Twitter and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But this is the first time we're actually seeing each other face to face. Hey, Emily, it is great to officially meet you and welcome to the show.
Yay. I'm like one of your biggest fangirls out there. And I'm so
Wow,
I'm
thank
so
you.
excited. I very rarely reach out to someone and say, "Can I be on your podcast?" But you had asked for people to submit
hmm
things and I was like, "I really want to be on your podcast." So I'm just really happy to chat with you and I'm just a big fan of all your work.
Thank you. And I think one of the reasons why we've connected and gone back and forth so much online is I think that we see the email world in very similar ways. So I was thrilled to have you on, and you have some great questions, and I can't wait to answer them. So let's dive right into it. What is the first thing you want to know?
I subscribe to your daily newsletter and I'm a big fan of it because it is so digestible. I'm a super busy mom, entrepreneur. It's one sentence, one link. And that to me was just brilliant when I first came across it. And I share it with so many people. I'm like, this is what you should do. So, my question is though, obviously, people say you got to stay consistent with email. How did you decide I'm going to do a daily email?
So I'll give you the kind of story because it's interesting. It started as an experiment and I stumbled into it. Right. So my newsletter, for anyone that doesn't know, you can check it out at fortheinterested.com/subscribe. And I started it, it's wild now, but 8 years ago. It started as a weekly Sunday newsletter. And for the first 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6 years, that's what it was. Published it every Sunday. The only Sunday I didn't publish it was the weekend I got married. Otherwise, it always came out for 5 straight years, whatever. Built a nice audience, all of that. At the same time, I was consulting and working with clients and helping them figure out how to use email and how to use newsletters to grow their business. And I would have conversations with people, as I'm sure you have as well. And they would hear the word newsletter and they'd be like, that sounds like a lot of work. How am I going to do that? I don't know what to write. How am I going to publish all the time? All of that. And I would always say to them something along the lines of, look, a newsletter can be whatever you want it to be. All it has to be is valuable. It's just a value delivery mechanism. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be any of this stuff, right? It doesn't even have to be original thing. I remember having a conversation. I had a client who was a comedian and he was like, look, I don't want to write. He wasn't a writer in that way. I don't want to write a newsletter. Like, I'm a performer. I was like, look, all you have to do is you don't even have to create something new every week. I'm sure you see a YouTube video, something that you think is funny, an Instagram post or whatever. All you have to do is just send that once a week. Give people a reason, especially for a comedian, because like they need a connection to their audience. Like email list is so important. I was like, that's all it has to be. Break your mind from this idea of what a newsletter is. And so I used to say this all the time. And literally after doing it, saying it all the time, I was like, I'm saying this as if it's true, but is it actually true? I started to get curious and I was like, I remember even saying to people, like, not only do I think that your email could be a sentence, I actually think that people would love it if it was a sentence because everyone's busy and I found myself, this is the other piece of it. I subscribed to a million newsletters and the ones that I was always opening were the ones, none of them were that short at that time, but were the ones that like, it was very simple and quick and short. And I knew it was going to take me a minute or two to at least see what would, I had other newsletters that were really good and really valuable, but I knew it was like a big commitment and I found myself not opening them as much because I didn't have the time or I was like, oh, I'll get to it later. And then you never get to it later.
And that's why I always tell people like you have to observe what you like in your own inbox. Like you have to look at your own inbox.
Yeah.
I have a couple that I subscribe to, and they're literally like 4 links or like one thing to check out. And that's what I do in I only do once a week, and it's just a
Yeah.
list of links, but doing it daily.
Well, so what happened? So it started with that idea of, okay. And then I got more and more curious about it. And the other thing that was happening was I'm also a big believer that whatever your sort of newsletter is supposed to be about, it should really be about, like, it shouldn't be like throwing all this other stuff in unless that's the point of the newsletter or whatever. But I was finding all this other stuff that I was like, I want to share this, but it doesn't really fit in my newsletter. So with all of that sort of floating in mind, I was like, I'm going to do a little experiment. And I originally called it the Daily Graph. And I was like, instead of limiting myself to one sentence, I was like, I'll give myself a paragraph. So I'll give myself up to one paragraph. It's basically going to be one item, a couple sentences, and a link. And I launched it and I said, hey, I'm doing this experiment. It's called the Daily Graph. If you want to check it out. And at the time, I don't remember how many people I had on my newsletter, maybe 20,000 subscribers or something like that. And a bunch of people signed up for it. In my own mind, I was like, I'll do it for a month. It shouldn't be that hard. I would never do a daily email that was long because that's too much, right? But I was like, oh, you know what? To share a couple sentences, like I could probably do that at least as an experiment. So of the sort of 20,000 people or whatever I had, maybe 500 or so subscribed to check out this new thing. And almost immediately, I discovered number one, I discovered my theory was true, that people really liked it. The feedback was great. I discovered because it was so short, it was very feasible and not hard for me to write. In theory, I could, and look, I was already finding stuff, so I don't spend a lot of extra time looking for stuff specifically for the newsletter. But if you think about it, if you write a curated newsletter, let's say that has 5 items on a week, you could easily do one a week. The same amount of time that takes, you could do daily. You just send one
Okay.
per day as opposed to five on Sunday. But what was super eye-opening to me was number one, it was manageable for me to write. I also wasn't doing I don't cover breaking news, so I could do it in advance. I literally could do a month of them in a couple hours or
Do
whatever.
that? Do you typically do that? Or
I should, I don't. I have all the links. I typically do them a week in advance. I do them one at a time. So I'll sit down and be like, here's going to be next week's stuff. So I don't do it every single day. I do usually give myself a little bit of a cushion. But what was really interesting was I saw a huge difference in the number of clicks on the link. Massive. And I think what was fast compared to the Sunday. So my Sunday newsletter, even if I feature, it would always have probably at least 5 links in it. It might even have 10. If you add, there's something in the intro, there's something in the outro, whatever, right? I would get more clicks on one link in my one paragraph daily, more total clicks than I got total in the Sunday issue.
that
That was the different in the engagement. And that was super eye opening thing because I was like, the open rate was maybe comparable, right? People were interested in both. But why are so many more people clicking this when the other one has so much more for them to click? And I realized a couple things. So number one, there's a focus to it. Number two, the descriptions in the daily newsletter, because I forced them to be so short, they were not clickbaity in a bad way, but they were clickbaity. I was teasing what it was. I wasn't giving these full summaries, which was boosting the click numbers. And also for people that were opening them, there was no comparison. It was like one thing, and they're like, okay, I'll just click that and see if I'm interested in it or not. It was sort of a lower bar to entry. So then what happened? So once I saw that it was working, it made me realize something else. I was like, what if I added a one line ad to this because the clicks were so much higher? And I did because I had at this point ads in my Sunday newsletter. I had 5 sort of one liner ads, but I was like, I'll just put one ad per email. And I literally batched them. So somebody would buy the Sunday one and then I would give them a weekday one. Basically, they get 2 issues for one. And also in the weekday one, I wrote the copy instead of them. And I used that same format that I was using that was driving all the clicks. And sure enough, those ad clicks were massive, like 5 to 10 times what they get in the Sunday. So now all of a sudden I realized, okay, this is a good product in terms of my readers like it. It's a much more valuable ad product or increases the value of my ad product by packaging with the Sunday one. And now I was like, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. But now I was in this weird situation where I was like, why is this? I kept promoting it in my main newsletter. And I was like, why is this separate? Like I'd probably gotten about 2,000 of my 20,000 people to subscribe to it. And I realized I was like, I can continue for months to try to get my existing newsletter subscribers to opt into this new thing. Or I think they're going to like it. And I could flip a switch and start sending it to all 20,000 and let them opt out instead of opting in. And so that's what I did. And I said to them, I gave them opportunity. I was like, look, I've been doing this daily thing. It's really good. I think you're going to like it. If you definitely don't want it, click here and I'll opt you out of it. And you'll still only get the weekly one. Otherwise, I'm going to start sending it, check it out, see what you think. When I did that, not many people opted out. It didn't drive many people away. I think of the 20,000, maybe, I don't remember exactly, but maybe 700 or so opted out. So the vast majority got it. And literally overnight, those ad clicks are massive. The link clicks are massive. And all of a sudden I realized, okay, now I have this one paragraph weekday edition. And then I have the Sunday email. And I've been doing that for the past couple of years. And it was unique and has been very effective and people love it. I get great feedback on it. That's the origin. And I'll share with you when I say the results have been great, it was interesting because prior to knowing we were going to talk about it, I haven't looked in a while and I was like, oh, I'm going to go look at some of these stats. So I'm now up to about 35,000 subscribers to my newsletter. We'll talk about this later. I clean the list all the time, but we'll talk more about that. Only 2% of my subscribers opt out of the dailies. So it's not overwhelming people. Look, I'm sure there's some people that don't want it, and I'm sure there's some people that just unsubscribe completely, so that might be a little misleading. But for the most part, the vast majority of people want it and like it. My overall open rate in the last 90 days is 46%, sending to 30,000 plus people on a daily basis. That's 46% opens on 2 million emails sent, which is crazy for 2 million individual emails over the course of 90 days. And the ads still work well and all of that. And it also is created, which is the other thing I think I like about it, a sort of daily connection and relationship to my audience. And it's quick and they know it and they expect it and they get it at the same time every morning. And so
It's my favorite daily newsletter. It really is.
yeah, thank you. And so I put together, it was interesting because the other part of your question when you were talking about like consistency, and I was like, okay, what advice would I give to people to do this? And so I put together 6 keys to consistently publishing a daily newsletter. And so I think whether you're going to use my format or not, here's what I would recommend to people. So number 1, keep it short. Doesn't have to be as short as mine, but keep it short. Daily newsletter is a big commitment for readers and writers. The longer the format, the less likely either one is to stick with it. Mine's a single paragraph. It's often a single sentence. There's no way I would be doing it if it was significantly longer. If my daily newsletter was like my Sunday newsletter, no way. Too much work for me. And I also don't think people would stick with it because it would be too much for them. The second key to consistently publishing a daily newsletter is to eliminate all the fluff. Cut anything that's not absolutely necessary. And that has also been a really interesting exercise when you limit yourself to a paragraph, right? You realize very quickly, I don't need a 3-sentence summary of an article I'm linking to when a single sentence will do. I don't need an intro when I only have a paragraph to work with.
The intro, every week I do a little 2-sentence intro,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always felt like I've had to include it, and I hate it. It's the hardest part for me to come
Yep.
up with, that little intro. And I did a survey. I said, do you guys like this? Do you guys need an intro? Do you care? And surprisingly, people were like, I like the intro. I'm like, we don't need it.
They say that, but they probably wouldn't miss it if I don't think anyone would be like, hey, where's the intro? And you don't, in most cases, and this is true of all newsletters, you don't need most of what you're writing, no matter who you are, even if you're a good writer. And again, I remind myself of this all the time. The third key to consistently publishing daily newsletter, write it like a social post that appears on a platform with no algorithm. So if you think about the tweets or the LinkedIn posts or whatever that you'd like to publish that would have links, but you don't publish them because the algorithm isn't going to show them to anyone anyway, send those as a newsletter. There's no algorithm to punish links in an email. So if you read my newsletter, a lot of times you can look at it and you go, you know what? I basically just wrote a tweet and sent it as an email with the link. And then along those lines, the fourth key here is repurpose your social post. So that awesome tweet you publish or LinkedIn post or whatever, just link to it in your newsletter and drive your audience. You don't need to settle for these social platforms only showing your post to 10% of your audience anymore. A mistake I see people make all the time is they'll embed the social post, especially with tweets. You don't want to do that. You want it to be a link because you want to drive them into the platform where they're more likely to comment and share and whatever. You don't want them to read it in their inbox and then not do anything with it, right?
Do you ever worry
It's a,
about the people? Because I do a lot of Twitter links in my email.
Mhm.
I worry about the people that don't use Twitter or X.
I don't particularly, although one thing I used to link to threads and what I've discovered. So if you're not a Twitter user, you'll still be able to see the tweet. But what I realized is you can't see the full thread. So I have stopped linking to threads, my own or others people's, because I got people replying who were saying, oh, but I can't read it, but they can read an individual tweet. So yeah, so I do think about it, but it's not, that's the only time it was ever an issue because they actually couldn't access it. By the way, the same thing with Medium posts behind a paywall, I won't link to anymore because I get people who go, but I can't read. The fifth idea here, or fifth key to consistently publishing a daily newsletter, share your old content and even valuable stuff that you didn't create. Most of your email list has not seen it or they don't remember they saw it. The dirty secret of my daily newsletter is about 50% of the stuff I feature in it, I originally shared years ago. No one has ever mentioned to me that they saw it before. And I have people that have subscribed for years, right? But a lot of times I share stuff. I'm like, I don't even remember when I shared this. So they're certainly not going to remember it. You don't have to constantly reinvent the wheel. And I think this is one of the reasons why people think a daily newsletter feels so overwhelming. But when you start to think about it through this lens of, oh, I can share all the stuff I've shared before or created before. I can link to all the stuff I'm currently posting on social channels. If you only need one or two things a day to send, it's not that hard, actually. Like you have this, unless you're really starting from scratch, but most people aren't starting from scratch. And then the sixth and last key here is keep the design as minimal as possible. It's one thing when you're doing a weekly newsletter or biweekly newsletter or whatever, but when you're doing a daily newsletter, every little issue specific design element you add basically 5X's the workload. So if you think you need a custom image to go with your one link, you need to pick a photo to go with it. Now you're doing that 5 times a week. It makes it much more complicated. And in most cases, it's not worth the effort. Your newsletter, my newsletter just has my logo at the top and then that's it. There's no image to go along with it. Having an image is not going to really make a big difference one way or another. And you're just forcing yourself to 5 times a week come up with an image. So when you consider those things, again, it becomes much easier to publish daily consistently, right? Keep it short, eliminate all the fluff, write it like a social post, repurpose your existing social post, share your old content or other content from other people you've shared before, keep the design as minimal as possible, and it won't be as hard as it seems. Won't be easy, but won't be as hard as
I love it. That's brilliant
Go on.
advice. And it's honestly like that's stuff I say to my clients as well. Like we're
Mhm.
working on Mother's Day emails for a client right now. And I'm like, can we not just use what we sent last year? Nobody remembers
Right.
what this company, we have thousands of
Yeah.
emails in our inbox. No, and simplicity in email marketing, especially I work in e-commerce a lot, like simplicity,
Mhm.
everything. People have
Yep.
no time. People don't have time.
And especially stuff that works. If it worked on social, if it worked in a previous email, it will work again. Stuff that works once doesn't not work the next time. So yeah,
Back and look
use
at
that.
the highest clicked email from a year ago. What were your 10 highest clicked on emails and use those again.
Exactly.
I love going back to
Cool. So I'm going to get to your next question in a second, but first I just want to take a quick side note. Anyone who's listening to or watching this episode, if you're paying attention, first of all, thank you. But second of all, I assume it's because you want to grow your newsletter or use email to grow your business. And that's exactly what I help members do in my skill sessions membership. I have sessions which are 1 hour video presentations like the newsletter booster, where I show you how to grow your newsletter in 5 minutes a day, or the newsletter social playbook, which shows you how to use social media to grow your newsletter and vice versa. I have sessions like the client generator, which will show you how to get more clients, and the 1 week promo plan, which will show you how to drive more attention and conversions to one offer in 1 week. As a member, you get access to all of those sessions. I believe there's about 14 in there already, plus new ones that I do. I do a new one once every 2 months that you can attend live and ask questions at. Plus, you get one-on-one help from me every single month in our monthly jam session coaching calls. So members are able to come on those calls. They're able to get me to review their sign-up pages, review their promotional emails, ask me how they should launch a new product or offer, ask me whatever they're specifically working on in their business and get my help with. It's an amazing membership. Again, if you want to use email to grow your business, you will love it. Go to joshspector.com/sessions to learn more. Feel free to email me at joshspector.com if you have any questions about that or want to know if it's a good fit for your specific needs. I'll be happy to tell you. If it's not, I don't want you to join anyway. I have no interest in taking money from people who don't get value from it. Okay, that's my plug for the moment. Let's get back to the next question. Emily, what is the next thing you want to know?
Okay. So my question is, you have a big email list. I would love
Mhm.
to have that many subscribers. Are you also constantly trying to keep growing that number, like actively growing your list? And I would love to know, do you worry about unsubscribers with the daily newsletter? So I'd love to know growing and unsubscribing.
Yeah. My take on this has certainly evolved over the years. Again, I'm 8 years into this. So in the beginning, when you're starting from scratch, you want some people. So growth is a little more, I was a little more invested in growth, both from a financial perspective and a time and effort perspective than I am now. That's been a sort of evolution. And over the years, I think there have been times where I'm like, I want to grow, I want to grow. And then there have been other times where I'm like, I'm not worried about growth. Like I'm worried about other stuff. So it fluctuates a bit. As I mentioned before in the previous question, going daily has not hurt me for the most part. Like people that like my newsletter seem to like the daily. And so that hasn't been a concern, even though I fully admit a daily is not for everyone, even if I am sure there are people who unsubscribe because they're like, I just don't want a daily and whatever. That's fine. It's not for them. I don't worry about unsubscribes. And in fact, I aggressively remove people from my list, especially within the last year or so. I don't care about my overall subscriber number. You may see me in interviews a year ago and I'm saying I have 40,000 subscribers. And now I'm saying I have 35,000 subscribers. And I'm getting new subscribers all the time. So that gives you an idea of how many I'm removing. And speaking of which, so I'm currently removing 700 to 1,000 subscribers a month. And that is me removing them. That's not counting people that are unsubscribing on their own. So, one of the things that people overlook or don't realize about growth, if you're actually keeping an engaged list and you're cleaning your list and you're doing whatever, even if you're not for that matter, they don't realize that you're always going to have unsubscribes. And so, some percentage of people are always going to unsubscribe no matter how great your newsletter is. So the bigger your audience, the more of those unsubscribes you're going to have every time you send an email. The other thing about daily is you're sending an email every day. So instead of getting people unsubscribing to your one email, you're getting people unsubscribing 5 times a week, 6 times a week, 5 times a week, and on Sunday. So in order to grow, in order to even stay even, so let's say I'm going to try to do some math on the fly. I'll keep it simple. Let's say you have 10,000 subscribers, and let's say that every time you send an email, 1% unsubscribe, which is not a horrible number. So let's say every time you have 10,000 subscribers, every time you send an email, 100 unsubscribe. You're sending 6 emails a week. Your 1% unsubscribe rate, you're losing 600 subscribers a week. To break even, you need to gain 600 subscribers a week. So growth, when you're at a certain level and you're sending a certain frequency, is really hard. And that's without even cleaning your list. That's just 1% of people unsubscribing when you send an email. So growth is very difficult. So on the one hand, it's deceiving because my overall list doesn't really seem like it's growing, but I'm adding a lot of new subscribers. If you were just looking at new subscribers that you're adding, like those numbers are pretty high and it's, oh, you're growing, but you're not really because it's countering all that other stuff. And just to stay even is challenging. So to give you an idea of how this plays out. So what I do is once a month, I create a segment. I look at anyone who has been subscribed to my newsletter for more than a month and has not opened an email in more than a month. For me, I'm sending daily. So that means they've gotten like 25 emails that they haven't opened. If I was only sending weekly, I'd probably have a longer time frame. But sending daily, I'm like, okay, you haven't opened my last 25 emails. You're probably not paying attention or you don't exist or whatever. I put them into a re-engagement sequence because that tracking is certainly not 100%. It's a 2 email sequence. And they basically get an email saying, hey, do you still want this? Are you paying attention? If you do, click this link or reply, let me know. right? If they don't get that one, they get another one saying, hey, last call. Do you want this? Do you whatever? If they don't click the link, they don't reply, they don't do anything, they get removed. And those two emails play out, I think, over the course of 2 weeks, basically. And I looked at the numbers before this call to give you some specifics. So last month, I had 780 people who had been subscribed for over a month, hadn't opened anything in a month. So they went into that sequence. Of those 780 people, 69 of them either clicked a link saying, I still want this, or replied or whatever. So that means
That's a lot.
91% of them were removed. 91% of the 780, it means either didn't care, weren't getting the emails, maybe it was lost in their spam or whatever, maybe they weren't real, who knows?
So I
But that
was subscribed to your newsletter. I had 2 emails subscribed to you, so
on the one hand, it's oh God. I put a tweet out about this and it was interesting because it really resonated with people. And I said, I just removed 780 subscribers from my newsletter. And then I said, actually, let me correct that. I just removed 0 readers from my newsletter.
mhm,
And I think that mindset is super important because it's easy to go, oh my God, I just lost 700 people. No, I didn't lose anybody. That's actually the truth. And so, in terms of growth, I'm optimizing everything for readers, not for subscribers. And if and so that's how I think about growth. And I don't really worry because of that. I don't really worry about unsubscribes. I worry about readers. But that doesn't mean I don't worry about growth at all. I have at various times spent money on in the early days, I ran Facebook ads to get newsletter subscribers. I've spent money through Sparkloop, newsletter recommendation stuff. I like those things. For me, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't really need more people. I need to focus more on converting the people that I have. And I have a big enough audience, right? The difference between me having 30,000 subscribers and 60,000 subscribers isn't really that much. That may change at some point. I'm not against that, but for me, it's not been a main focus. But all that said, I know lots of people want to grow. So I did put together some suggestions here for it's not even suggestions. It's really a breakdown of without spending money, my newsletter does still grow. Like I said, I'm bringing in lots of new subscribers. So I want to share 7 ways I grow my newsletter without spending a dollar. The first is word of mouth. It's just simply the best marketing tactic in the world is a valuable product. I flat out say, and I've tweeted this, my newsletter is awesome. I truly believe that. If you don't believe your newsletter is great, you have a bigger problem than a marketing problem. My newsletter is awesome, so readers tell others about it. It seems obvious, but I think most creators spend more time looking for growth hacks than they do improving their newsletter itself. And they would grow more if they had a better product and a better newsletter. And I'm sure you have found similar in your experience. The second way my newsletter has grown without spending a dollar is I optimize my social bios for the newsletter. So my Twitter and LinkedIn bios are specifically designed to drive people to subscribe to my newsletter. There's a clear call to action in the bios for the newsletter. And the link that I use takes people straight to my newsletter sign up page. It doesn't take them to the homepage of my website. I don't want them to just go to my homepage and then hope they find their way there. If they're checking out my profile, I want you to get on my newsletter. Here's why you should do it. Here's what's in it for you. And here's the place to go do it. The third way that I grow is the ConvertKit Creator Network and Sparkloop. I'm a big fan of ConvertKit. I've used it for a few years. I used to use something else that's much better than what I used to use. Their creator network is great. It's, again, just a recommendation engine where people can recommend you and vice versa. I think that and Sparkloop, which ConvertKit now owns, those are the best newsletter recommendation tools around. And you can use, and I apologize, I know you're a queen of MailChimp. And you can use them paid. That's the other thing. You can use them for free. And you can also use them paid if you do want to amplify your growth. And I have done that in the past. The fourth way I grow my newsletter without spending a dollar is pre-promotion of upcoming issues on social media. So it's fine to promote your newsletter after it comes out, and it's great, and you should, but it's more effective in terms of getting subscribers to promote it before it's published. So if you tease what you're going to be sharing with the specific value people will get from reading that issue, it gives people a clear reason to subscribe so they don't miss it. Just sharing the issue and going, hey, here's the issue I published yesterday. They might click and read it, but they don't necessarily need to subscribe. It's much better to go, hey, if you want to learn about X, not X the platform, but if you want to learn about fill in the blank, go subscribe to my newsletter because that's what I'm going to share tomorrow. The next key for growth for me is I have sign up forms and links to sign up to my newsletter everywhere. If you read any of my blog posts, old or new, it's impossible to not know I have a newsletter. There are forms at the bottom of every post, and more importantly, there are mentions of the newsletter with links to my sign up page within the content of most posts.
Mm.
A lot of times people have a form buried on the footer, buried on the sidebar, and then they go, "Oh, people are reading my post, but they're not subscribing." Put it in the section where they're reading. Even it doesn't even have to be a form. It can be a little like a sideline of if you're writing a post about how to use Instagram, you can have a little parentheses, which like, speaking of using Instagram, you might want to check out my newsletter for more tips about how to use it, that kind of thing. You'll get way more subscribers there. Then the sixth thing that has driven growth for me is cross promotions. I think they're the single best way to get new subscribers for free. It's to find someone with a similar audience and offer to promote their newsletter in exchange for them promoting yours. When a cross promotion works well, do it again a few months later and again a few months after that. This is another thing I think people forget, right? They do it once, they're like, "Oh, that was great. Okay, you both benefited from it." So reach back out and be like, "Hey, let's do this again in 3 months or 6 months or whatever." The other thing I would add here about cross promotion is a lot of times people assume if you want to cross promote your newsletter, it has to be with another newsletter, but it doesn't. Like maybe there's someone with a big Instagram channel or even a small Instagram channel that speaks to your audience. You can promote their Instagram in your newsletter and they can promote your newsletter on their Instagram. Don't limit yourself to thinking it just has to be newsletter for newsletter. And then the seventh and last way that I've grown my newsletter a lot without spending a lot of money is my podcast and YouTube channel. Just like with my blog posts, it's impossible to listen to my podcast or watch the episodes on YouTube and not know I have a newsletter. We've already in this episode multiple times talked about my newsletter, of course. Most importantly, the topics I discuss on my podcast are in alignment with the types of things I cover in my newsletter. So a lot of times you will see people where that misalignment, they created this other thing, but it doesn't align with what the newsletter is or vice versa. For me, if you listen to my show because you're an expert who wants to grow your business, chances are you're going to be interested in my newsletter, which is about, you guessed it, how to grow your business as an expert. So you really want those things aligned. And this also extends to your business, right? Your newsletter, your social content, your podcast, your YouTube, whatever you're doing, all of those things should be aligned in terms of the topics you cover and the end result that you help people get. And that should be the same end result that you're helping people get through your business. And so if you do any or all of those seven things, I guarantee your newsletter will grow, even if you have no budget to spend to do so.
That's brilliant.
Any questions about any of that?
Yeah, it's just brilliant. And do you do a pop-up on your website at all?
I don't regularly. I know they work. I'm not against it. I've done them at times in the past. They absolutely work. I'm not currently doing it now. There's no real particular reason why. Yeah, but yeah, I'm not anti pop up by any. Although I do think if you're going to do it, I don't think it's smart to have the pop up immediately when people arrive. I think it's better, right? A delay is a much smarter tactic because let them be like, "Oh, this is valuable." And then either a delay or an exit attempt or it pops up, that kind of thing. Because it is annoying when you go to a site and so you can't even get to the site until you click through three different pop up windows. Allow myself to interrupt myself. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up about my great clone experiment. As I mentioned a couple episodes ago, I've partnered with Delphi.ai to create a clone of myself. I fed it 2 million words worth of content I've shared in the past, and it's created my own personal AI that can answer any questions you may have about how to grow your audience and business. Go to Delphi.ai/Josh Spector to try it out. Been up and running for a couple months, and the results so far have been fantastic. You can read my blog post all about why I'm doing it at joshspector.com/AI-clone. My clone has answered thousands of questions already for my audience, and the feedback I'm getting from them has been fantastic. That's why I want to encourage you not only to check out my clone, but also to consider creating your own. You can go to Delphi.ai to learn more and set up your clone, and the process is ridiculously easy. You just connect your blog, podcast, social posts, or YouTube channel, and within minutes, your clone is up and running. I'm happy to answer any questions you have about it. Just let me know, or you can always ask my clone. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, let's get to your third question. What is the last thing you want to know?
So obviously email is a very big part of your life, but I'm
Yep.
just curious, like your overall business, your overall income as a business
Mhm.
owner, how crucial is your for the interested newsletter? How crucial is email to your income, to your overall business?
It's funny, the way I describe it is it's the engine of my entire business. It is the absolute foundation to everything I do. And even revenue I get from whether it be consulting or coaching or product sales or whatever, I think all of it in some way or another can be traced back to my newsletter and my emails. I also think that an email list is the most accurate measure of audience size because I think a lot of people confuse their definition. My definition of audience, I think, is different than maybe what a lot of people think. A lot of people think of their audience as the number of people that they have reached with their content. I think of audience as the number of people you know you can reach with your next piece of content. So if you have a video, let's say on YouTube that goes viral and reaches 50,000 views. I don't think your audience is 50,000 people. I think your audience is how many people do you know that you can get the next video in front of? And to me, even with subscribers and social followers, you don't know how many of them you're going to reach. But my email list, they may not all open it, they may not all click it, but I know when I hit send, it's going to get to the inbox of every one of those people on my list. To me, that is audience size. So that's another reason. So not only is the email the engine in driving my business, it's the most important metric in terms of how big is my actual audience and my actual reach, because that's telling me how many people I can reliably get something in front of, right? If I'm and to give you an idea, like if I'm launching a product, I don't even think about if I'm doing the math and going, okay, how many people would need to buy this thing in order for me to make X amount of money or whatever. Even if I have 35,000 people on my newsletter, I don't even use that as the basis. I look at the open rate. If my average open rate is 46%, I don't go, okay, I have 35,000 people. And if 10% buy, that's going to be 3,500 sales. No, I have the 46% who are opening regularly, 10% of that. And so I think a lot of times people can lie to themselves and fool themselves into thinking their audience is bigger than they are. And this is especially true if email is not a key foundation to what you're doing, you really don't have control of who you can get stuff in front of. The other thing I would say is, again, it's not just that I think it's the engine of my entire business. I see over and over again that it is. So my newsletter and emails, it's the main driver of my podcast downloads. It's the main driver of my YouTube views. It's the main driver of my website traffic. I use it to drive to social posts the way I talked about linking. I don't really have to worry. Look, I want the algorithms to show my stuff to as many people as possible, but I also know that I've got an algorithm breaker in my pocket because I'm gonna send my people there. Yeah, okay, LinkedIn, I'd love it if you showed it to my followers, but even if you don't, I'm gonna show it to my followers. I'm gonna drive them there. The other thing I would say from a business standpoint, it is very rare that anyone buys anything from me who is not already subscribed to my free newsletter. It happens occasionally, very rare. And the other thing that means, especially when you start getting into clients and services and dealing with sort of those type of things, as opposed to a one-off product buyer, what I've discovered is the newsletter is an incredible filter for clients. So there have been times when someone has come to me, maybe they were referred by someone else, they don't know my newsletter, and I work with them. And at times, most times it's fine, but occasionally I've been like, this is like not the best. And then I'll realize they don't read I've never had that happen with someone who reads my newsletter. It's the perfect filter because because they read my newsletter, they know what I'm all about. They know how I approach things. They resonate with that. By the way, this also allows you to charge a premium price because they want me. They're looking for someone to help them with whatever it is, copywriting or their newsletter or sales strategy, whatever, clarity call, whatever it is. They want to buy me because they've gotten to know me through the newsletter. And even if it's not buying, they want my help or they want me on their podcast because they've gotten to know me and whatever. So again, it all comes back to that newsletter. The other thing is the newsletter is this asset that allows me to do cross promotions. that allows me to get in front of other audiences, that allows me to get booked on podcasts. I've started to reach out to get booked on some other podcasts. And my approach to them is not just, hey, book me. I've done X, Y, and Z, and I'll be a great guest and I can talk about blah, blah, blah. As part of that pitch, I go, and oh, I can promote your podcast to my 30,000 newsletter subscribers.
Huge.
It's a nice added bonus, right? And I think that idea of email list and newsletter as asset that enables, that opens up all sorts of doors. And by the way, that's also true if you have a small list, right? It may not be as impressive and as meaningful, but if you have 1,000 subscribers compared to the person that's, hey, just book me on your show, to be able to say, hey, book me on your show, and I can also share it with my 1,000 subscribers, that's something that's going to help your cause. And then when I rolled out ads a few years ago, it has also become a revenue stream. So I've made over 6 figures in ads in my newsletter after years of not having any ads in it.
It
So,
inspired me to start running ads, and my
yep,
ads are very expensive, but I sold out almost the whole year.
that's awesome.
And I
Yeah.
literally, like, you inspired me to do that.
And then the last thing I would say about this is people get hung up in newsletter versus social. And I've talked before a lot of times about how even the social, I have a sort of line that I've said where it's even the social media platforms know that email is the best way to get to people. That's why they constantly want to email you. Like, why do they want to email you anytime anything happens on LinkedIn or Twitter? Because they know it's the best way to get to you. But one thing that was super eye opening to me is I started using Right Message, which is a way to set up a post subscriber survey. So when people subscribe to my newsletter, they get a little pop up and they answer 3 or 4 questions to tell me about themselves. And one of the questions I have for them is, what is the main social media platform that you use for your business? My mind is blown. So I give them options, right? You can choose LinkedIn or Twitter or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And the last option is, I don't use social media for my business. 14% of people who subscribe to my newsletter are telling me they don't use social media for their business, which blows my mind, especially like with my audience and what I'm doing and whatever. But I think it speaks to the power of newsletters. And that means a significant part, 14% is not small, a significant part of my audience is not using social. So if I don't have a newsletter, I don't exist to them, right? If I'm just using social or whatever. Okay. So I'm going to leave you with this because I think there's a lot of people that want to use a newsletter, want to use email to grow their business. So I've put together 5 things you need to do with your newsletter if you want to use it to grow your business. If you're just doing it because you want to talk about whatever you want to talk about it, have fun, good luck for you, right? But these 5 things, if you want to use it as a tool to grow your business. So number 1, the value your newsletter delivers needs to align with the value your business delivers. So if your business is designed to help entrepreneurs generate sales, your newsletter should not be about work-life balance because you're going to attract people interested in work-life balance, not people interested in generating sales, which is ultimately the product. So alignment is huge. The second thing is you need to publish at least 2 newsletter issues per month. Ideally, I would say publish at least once a week, but if you only send monthly, for example, you're only taking 12 shots a year to grow your business. That's not enough. If you're publishing monthly or once in a blue moon and you're going, my newsletter is not growing my business, you barely tried. You got to publish regularly. The third thing is you want to pay attention to who clicks what. So not just your percentage of, oh, I got this percentage of people clicked. You want to look at the actual links that people are clicking in your newsletter because those reveal what those specific people want. And that can and should influence your messaging, your marketing, your products, and your copy. Your audience is literally showing you what they want. So and it doesn't even have to go to your content, right? If you shared a link to some other piece of content that said, oh, here's an article on how to use copywriting to attract leads, and it got a lot of clicks, so that everyone who clicked that wants to learn how to use copywriting to attract leads. So your messaging and your product should not be how to use copywriting to make sales. It should be how to use copywriting to attract leads. Use the words that they've shown are resonating with. The fourth thing, your newsletter needs to be about your audience, not yourself. A newsletter isn't a promotional tool. It's a value delivery tool, as I'm sure this is like the most common mistake that businesses make. Don't just send emails talking about how great you are and asking people to buy stuff. Figure out how you can deliver value to them through those emails, and then they will want to buy stuff. And then the last one here, the last thing to do with your newsletter, if you want to use it to grow your business, is don't write about the thing, help readers do the thing. And what I mean is you want to ask yourself a simple question about anything you share in your newsletter. You want to ask, what can my readers do after reading this that they couldn't do before? The way a newsletter grows your business is by helping people take meaningful action toward their goals, not just by giving them stuff to read. And I ask myself, I think a big part of the success of my newsletter is every single thing I share in it. I ask myself on an individual link level, I go, what can someone do after they read this or consume? Or are they just going to go, oh, that was interesting? I see tons of interesting stuff that's really interesting, and I don't share it because it's not actionable. And I think people pick up on that in my newsletter, that they're looking at stuff and they go, oh, I can actually do something with this. I can implement this. I can do whatever. So for example, I will not share, let's say there's an article about the biggest shift in YouTube creators or the state of the YouTube creator economy. I'm not going to share that. I'm going to share how to write a YouTube headline that gets more clicks, because one is interesting. The other is valuable, right? It's valuable and it's actionable. And that's what I'm going to share. And if you want to grow your business, ultimately people are going to hire you, buy your products, and pay you to get a result, right? To get an outcome, to get a transformation. So your content should all be about helping them make those transformations, not generally interesting, unless your business is doing generally interesting stuff. It's a really easy filter, right? Just look at it and ask yourself, what can someone do with this? So if you do those 5 things, your newsletter will absolutely help you grow your business. All right, Emily, any last questions?
This is incredible. Our ideas
Awesome.
are brilliant, and so I really appreciate you sharing all of this.
Yeah, thank you. And I know you've got tons of expertise, especially for anyone who's using MailChimp. And I should say, by the way, I have used MailChimp. I actually have a client who uses MailChimp, so I'm familiar with it. I do work with it all the time. Obviously, it's been around. It's been around forever. So let people know where they can get more of your stuff, where they can connect with you, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on Instagram daily, Emily at Emily Ryan Likes. You can definitely subscribe to my weekly email. And now I should know the link, but it's emilyemails.com/get. That's the website. I'm on X as well and TikTok and all that, but those are probably the best 2 places.
For me, by now, if you're listening to this, hopefully get my newsletter, fortheinterested.com/subscribe. Check out my skill sessions. Again, if you find this stuff helpful, you will absolutely love the session. I can go to joshspector.com/sessions for those. Emily, thank you so much. It was great to meet you. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. And
Thanks,
I will
Josh.
see everyone next time. Thanks.
Okay. See ya. Thank you.